going to win the 2024 World Series?
Just trust me, you'll be fine. And when I'm back in Chicago, I feel it.
Alright, y'all know it. It is that time of year again where playoff predictions start. Last year was the first year I ever made a video like this. It was spontaneous. I filmed it the day the playoffs started. Well, this time I'm filming it at midnight the night before. I've been spending hours trying to make my best prediction on who will win it all this year. Each playoff series, American League, National League, just trying to look at pitching matchups. It's been a long night of me just trying to study and make my best predictions. But you know what? It's quite hard to predict out of 12 teams in the playoffs, only one to win the World Series. So I did my best and I'm just excited to share them with you. So without further ado, I'm not gonna ramble on too much. Let's just get right into it. Out of our 12 teams, who do I have winning it all? We're gonna get started for the American League. We have the Detroit Tigers versus the Houston Astros. Spoiler alert, this may be my most bold prediction of this whole entire video, but I have the Detroit Tigers moving on past the Houston Astros. You have in game one Tariq Skubal, who is probably going to win your Cy Young this year. I just have that game. I mean, if the Tigers don't win that game, then of course, I don't think it's going to be very good for them. But in the best of 3 wildcard series, I really think that the Tigers might just have a chance to squeeze on past. But the Houston Astros have a ton of playoff experience, and Framber Valdez, who will be their game 1 starting pitcher, also is having a career year. Under a 3 ERA, he's just been incredible. So game 1 of this wildcard series is going to be nuts. But I have the Tigers moving on. Moving on to our second wildcard, we have the Kansas City Royals versus the Baltimore Orioles. Man, these are 2 teams in the American League that I have personally found myself rooting for. The Royals making the playoffs for the first time since they won it all in 2015. Quite an impressive story, and I myself am a huge Bobby Witt Jr. fan. Love that guy. And the Royals pitching has just been doing it all this year. They have Seth Lugo, Cole Ragans, Michael Wacha. I mean, those are a pretty solid 1-2-3 punch right there. They make a really good case to move on in this series. But then on Baltimore side, you have your ace Corbin Burnes, who has been electric this year like he always is. Burnes finishing the year with a 2.92 ERA, and a huge reason as to why they made the playoffs again. So I was looking at both of these teams and obviously trying to make my decision, and last year I took the Orioles all the way to the World Series, had them winning it. Bit me in the butt because they got swept by the Rangers. But this year, I think that they got a taste of the postseason last year, and I don't think that they're going to get swept this year. I actually have them moving on past the Royals this year into the ALDS. I do think this is going to be a really exciting matchup, but I think Corbin Burnes, I have the Orioles 100% winning game 1. And I just think that that young core of Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Anthony Santander, Colton Cowser, I mean, so yes, of course, I do have the Orioles moving on. Moving on to our first series of the National League wild card, we have the New York Mets versus the Milwaukee Brewers. I myself absolutely hate to pick the Brewers over anything, but versus the Mets this year, the Brewers are 5-1. Losing Counsell, I just had no idea that they were gonna have this much success. And they just kept winning ball games. Pitching has been good. Young guys have truly stepped up. Willie Adames, Rhys Hoskins, William Contreras, that guy is just on fire. I mean, he's just one of the best catchers in the league. And as much as it pains me to do it, versus the Mets, I do have the Brewers moving on. But I can't say that without talking about the Mets too much more. I mean, they do have Francisco Lindor, who, I mean, has been having just such a phenomenal year this year. But when I look at the Mets pitching, it just seems very average to me. Nothing truly sticks out about their pitching. Luis Severino, who has had some good starts, but he also has a almost 4 ERA. I don't know. I just have the Brewers moving on. Let's move on. Coming in for the next wild card matchup, we have the Atlanta Braves versus the San Diego Padres. Who knew that the Atlanta Braves would literally push it to the last day to clinch a playoff spot? But they did today with the doubleheader versus the Mets. They split the series, kicked the D-backs out, and now here we are. We have the Braves. I definitely predicted the Braves to have over 100 wins again this year, but wow, things have turned. Braves have such a solid 1-2 punch with Chris Sale and Ronaldo Lopez. I mean, those guys have just been phenomenal. And then we move on to the Padres, who have Tatis, Machado, Jackson Merrill, Luis Ariz, who just keeps hitting singles. As crazy as this may sound, I think that the Padres offense will outshine the Braves pitching. And that makes probably not much sense because I think that the Braves' strong suit to this playoff series will be their 1-2 punch in Sale and Lopez. But I think in this best of 3 wildcard series that the Padres have a huge chance to win and move on, advance because of their offense. I think anything could happen in the playoffs, and that's why I've stressed so hard over each individual series. But I personally have the San Diego Padres moving on. Moving on to the first series of our American League Division Series, we have the Detroit Tigers versus the Cleveland Guardians. On the season, the Guardians have a 7-6 record over Detroit. Pretty even throughout the season. They just have one more win, over 500 just versus the Tigers. I would not have thought that the Guardians would have won 92 games on the season. Again, I don't know the exact pitching matchups on this series, but again, the Tigers possibly could be running with Tariq Skubal and Jack Flaherty and Reese Olson. But then on the other side of the Cleveland Guardians, you not only do you have Andres Jimenez, Jose Ramirez, Steven Kwan, any lead that the Guardians will have over any of these games. I mean, you have star closer Emmanuel Clase to just end out any single game. Overall, I think that this will be a fun matchup versus the division rivals, Tigers and Guardians, but I do have the Cleveland Guardians moving on to the American League Championship Series. Moving on to our next division series, this is going to be a fun one. We're going to have the Baltimore Orioles versus the New York Yankees. If this actually happens, this is going to be one of the probably best series in the playoffs, especially for this year, because I mean, you have two teams that have been fighting it all year long, neck and neck. So let's dive a little deep into it real quick. The Orioles have a record of 8-5 over the New York Yankees this year, but the Yankees have guys Judge, Soto, Anthony Volpe on defense. I mean, you have a pretty you have solid guys all over your field. Also, had to look over here on Fangraphs. How could I forget Jazz Chisholm Jr.? I mean, been a stud on the Yankees. This trade probably just saved his year. But this also, it kind of pains me to say, but I do have the Baltimore Orioles advancing to the championship series. I hate to do it, but the last time I saw the Yankees in the playoffs, they absolutely got demolished. I hope that isn't the case completely. I hope that this goes best of 5 games, especially having Soto to add some spice onto that roster. I'm just going to boldly pick the Orioles again, and hopefully it doesn't bite me in the butt. Moving on to the National League side, we are going to have the Milwaukee Brewers versus the Philadelphia Phillies. Finally get to talk about these Phillies, man. And boy, have they've been like one of the best teams in all of baseball this whole year. Obviously had a little bit of a down second half, but they picked it back up. Guys like Bryce Harper, Alec Boehm was so hot to start the year, Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, Nicholas Castellanos, and then what could be a Cy Young Award winner here if it weren't for Atlanta Braves' Chris Sale. You have Zach Wheeler. Matt Strahm has been just an absolute lockdown in the bullpen, but having a 1-2 punch, possibly 1-2-3 punch with Wheeler, Suarez, and Nola, I mean, I don't really know how much better it can get than that. I think the Phillies are going to make it deep in this best of 5 series versus the Milwaukee Brewers. And the Milwaukee Brewers, I think that this might be the end of their train stop right here. Yeah, I think that they have it in them to win the wild card series versus the Mets, but also I just don't. I've been sleeping on the Phillies for such a long time. The last 2 years, I can't do it anymore. Last year, I predicted the Braves to advance past the Phillies, and the Phillies keep beating them. And I think that the Phillies can stop just about a lot of other teams as well, and I think that the Brewers is one of them. The Phillies have a 4-2 record over Milwaukee this year, so a little bit to persuade me, but no, I look at the Philadelphia Phillies and they are the team to beat this year. They have been #1 for a reason, and I think that they're just Red October. I think that they're just going to storm October. I think it'd be hard to stop them. So I have the Philadelphia Phillies moving on to the championship series. Moving on to our second championship series in the National League, we have the Los Angeles Dodgers versus the San Diego Padres. The Dodgers are only 5-8 over the Padres this year, so they've been beaten by them quite a bit. I absolutely am not going to be picking against the Dodgers in this division series when they have Ohtani. I think we all want to see Ohtani make a deep run with the Dodgers in the playoffs. Obviously, Mookie Betts, Teoscar Hernandez. I believe Freddie Freeman is a bit injured right now, which absolutely pains me. I haven't seen updates on him, but I know he kind of sprained his ankle in one of the last home games the Dodgers had. So I don't really know his likeliness of playing in the playoffs as of this moment, but I mean, crossing fingers if they make it deep into the playoffs, he can be playing for them. But I do have the Los Angeles Dodgers moving on to the championship series. All right, I've been rambling a lot. Let's speed it up a little bit. Getting it started, our ALCS matchup, I have the Cleveland Guardians versus the Baltimore Orioles. The Cleveland Guardians do have a 4-3 matchup versus the Orioles this year. Obviously, I'm not talking about as many players because I've already discussed it, you know, in the prior series over here. But I'm just solely, my predictions are based on how that game 1 starts out for each series. And I think that in this best of 7, the Orioles, I'm just feeling it so strongly this year. And it sounds funny because if you watched my prediction video last year, I had the Orioles winning the World Series, but I do just have faith that they're going to make a huge push into the playoffs late into October. So I do have the Orioles advancing to the World Series this year. All right, moving on to our National League Championship Series. Who do I have winning? We have the Philadelphia Phillies versus the LA Dodgers. This would be a very fiery matchup. I mean, you have the best 2 teams in the National League, in the Phillies and the Dodgers. You have Bryce Harper versus Ohtani. You have Mookie Betts versus Trey Turner. I just have a strong feeling. I mean, we always make jokes about how the Dodgers choke in the playoffs, but yeah, they do have Ohtani this year, and Ohtani is a unicorn. So things are going to be a little funny to see how they play out, but I do have the Philadelphia Phillies advancing to the World Series. I have doubted the Phillies the last 2 years where I've been like, I want to see them go deep into the playoffs, but I have the Braves beating them out, or I have another team beating them out, and I'm not doing that no more. And I think that if anyone's gonna beat the Dodgers, I do think it could be the Philadelphia Phillies. And I know I'm being a bit boring and picking the best teams in the National League to play each other in the championship series, but it's just kind of what I'm feeling. And obviously these are just predictions. This doesn't mean this is actually gonna happen. But let's just see how close I get. Moving on to our World Series final prediction, the Baltimore Orioles versus the Philadelphia Phillies. This would be a matchup of the East. Obviously, you have 2 aces and guys of Corbin Burnes and Zach Wheeler. Ranger Suarez and Grayson Rodriguez. I haven't mentioned him yet for the Orioles. Can I tell y'all one thing I didn't realize until right now as I'm filming this video? Anthony Santander quietly put up 44 home runs. I don't really want to talk about specific players. I'm just going to get right into it and tell you who I think is going to win. So for the 2024 World Series, the Orioles versus the Phillies, I have the Philadelphia Phillies winning the 2024 World Series in my playoff predictions. You heard it here first. You heard it here first. I'm kind of scared to see what the comments will turn out like. If you guys are watching this, I want to know your picks in the comments. This is a tricky video. I've spent hours weighing out all the options, but like I've said previously, I have picked against the Phillies many times, and every time I say this, I wish I stuck with them a little longer. I just would always think, it's too good to be true. The Phillies are going to get knocked out by the Braves or the Dodgers or any other team. Like, I didn't have the Diamondbacks beating them last year. That was a really close matchup there. This is my 2024 playoff prediction video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm just excited to see how October folds out. And yeah, more videos to come. I hope you guys did enjoy this one. If you did, please make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure you comment down below your playoff predictions. I want to know who you have winning it all. And without further ado, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.